Welcome back, guys. Now that we have our HTML service provider linked in, what we want to do now is actually build up our form. So let's go to Sublime Text, and what I want to do now is I want to give it a simple H1. I'm using Emmet. If you haven't noticed, I'm going to say create blog. Alright, and what I want to do is make it line break. Alright, so this is where the form is going to go. So typically a form would be something like this. You'd give it a method and an action. Well, since we gave it the HTML service provider and we have our form facade, we're going to use a form facade to create this. So let's go about that. The syntax is going to look something like this. Alright. So as you know from earlier, this is unescaped data, but this is the way that we're going to make our form. So we're going to say form, and we need to say open, all right, and give it some empty parentheses for now. We are going to add something to there. Let's copy that because we need to close the form, all right, and we're just going to change this to close. Let's take a look at the view source with this. All right, let's refresh. Alright, we have create blog and we have an invisible form down here. Let's take a look at our view source. Alright, so we have a form. The method is post by default and our action is referencing the same page that we're on. So we need to change this back to blogs because we're posting to blogs. And if we go back to our terminal, I'll show you this. Alright, so we want to post this to blogs, and the method that we're going to be using is blogs store. Alright, or you can look here in the blogs controller using the store method. So let's go back to Chrome and finish looking at our view source. Alright, and another thing is we have this input field right here, and it says name underscore token. The type is hidden, and it has a value, which is this long string right here. And this is our CSRF token. And this will protect us from people mishandling our input form for their gains. So let's go back to Sublime Text and create this form. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to give it a label and a input for our blog title. Alright, let's say form label, and inside of here we need to give it a name, and this is the same thing as saying a label for. So we're going to say title, okay? And the next parameter is going to be the actual text for our label. So we want to say blog title. Alright, cool. So I'm going to copy this, and here I'm going to say form text, and we need to also give this a title. The second parameter is going to be null because that is our default value, and our third parameter is going to be the class of this field. So I just want to say class form control. Cool. So let's wrap this in a form group actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Alright, so let's copy this again. Go below, and right here I'm going to change this to body, and I'm going to say blog body. Alright, we also need to change this to body. This will still be null, and we can still use a form control for this class. Now I need to add the button. So let's put this button in form group class again, and I want to say form submit. And the first value is going to be what's written on the button. So we're just going to say add blog. And the second value is just going to be our classes again. So I'm going to say class. And let's just give this a class of button and button primary. Cool. Alright, so what we can do now is let's take a look at what this looks like. Go back to Chrome and refresh. And we have our blog title and our blog body, but this doesn't look right. It's too wide, and then this isn't tall enough, so we need to change this to a text area, and let's wrap this in a column medium 6 wrapper. So let's go back, and inside of here what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a class of col medium 6, And I'm going to wrap all of this with the div. And what I want to do here is add text area. Save. Let's look how this is now. Cool, so this looks a little bit better, and we can add things, but we don't have anything to deal with text that's being submitted. So let's go back to our blogs controller and deal with this. So if you look up here, we're using the Illuminate HTTP request, which is our request facade, and instead of typing this all out, I just want to use request. So let's get rid of this. Alright, let's go back down to our store method, and don't worry about this request right now. I'm actually going to delete it. In the next video, I'm going to make a blog request that will deal with the validation of the form. So now down here, I just want to make an input variable and set that equal to request all, and I want to return this input. So what we need to do before we can actually get this input is we need to set the action to the correct URL, because if you remember, we have it set to submit to blogs create, which is the same page that we're on. We want to actually post it to blogs, which is blogs store. That's the method we're using. So what we can do is let's go back and let's go to our create.blade.php, and we are going to make a URL, and let's just pass that to blogs. Alright, so by writing it this way, what we're saying is we're posting it to this URL, which is blogs. So let's just save that and go back to Google Chrome and refresh, and inside of here, let's write title, and let's just say we set up a create blog form. Alright, let's add that, and we get all of the data needed. We get our CSRF token, we get our title, and our body. Awesome. So now what we can do is actually persist this to the database. But before we do that, I want to make a blog request, and what that's going to do is set up a little bit of validation so people can't go in here and write whatever they want. We can say that this field's required, we can say this field's required, and maybe a minimum of X amount of characters, or we can set it to only accept an email if that would happen to be one of the input fields that we were using. So there's a lot of flexibility with these requests, and it really saves you a lot of time with having to deal with people putting in unnecessary stuff that could also damage your database. So in the next tutorial, we're going to actually be persisting this to the database after we create our blog request.